kao što sam najavio, sledeći govornik je čovjek koji se ne plaši da kaže teške stvari i uradi teške stvari. I ima li boljeg primjera toga što je uradio ovog leta, a to je da je doveo jedan od najuzbudljivijih kompanija u svetu u Srbiju. On i još neki ljudi, sigurno će pričati o tome, ali zaista kada tako serijski radiš dobre stvari kao što on radi, onda treba da čujemo o tome. Dragan Tomić, moje veliko zadovoljstvo ga predstavim. Eno ga na stolici.
Do you guys hear me? This is going to be in English, iako sam ja lokalni proizvod. So my presentation today is about entrepreneurship. It's going to be different than the previous few presentations. For me, business is very personal. So you cannot separate the business and life, and so it's also a personal story. So who am I? I have to establish a little bit of credibility. So if I think of myself, like how to summarize so far my years, the first third of my life was here, local. Then I went to the US for about 15 years or so. And then the last third of my life is here. So I do a lot of thinking, and one of the things that I frequently think about, and it was mentioned just a second ago, does life here in Serbia make sense? Is this the place where I want to spend my time, to invest my energy? Is this the place where I want to raise my kids? Is this basically the place to not just do business, but also build communities? And so when I asked myself this question in '92, the answer was very simple. It was time to go, right? I had an opportunity to leave, so I left. I left for the US, and the idea at the time was not to come back. So I finished my education there, and then I was lucky to get an internship at Microsoft, and I started my career at Microsoft in '98. When I started my career, it was all about fitting in. The idea is, in school you learn to be an engineer, but once you're part of the team in the industry, it's a much different story. The production engineering is a completely different story than what people learn in school. So first few years was all about me becoming an engineer who can actually do things within Microsoft. But then a few years in, I started realizing that, if this is the end game, if life is just a set of projects, a set of great technologies, building great stuff, then there's a missing part. So because I'm an engineer, and for me, like these simple equations are driving my life, if we spend roughly 8 hours sleeping and we spend at least 8 hours in work-related activities, and then there's 8 hours for leisure, if you want to balance this equation, then the work part has to have meaning. And I'm not like one of those guru guys that will tell you, hey, you have to do meaning at work. I'm just saying, basically, it's a mathematical thing. It's a very simple equation. So for it to balance out, the work part has to have some sort of meaning. And so the question is, hey, maybe not initially in your career, but later on, do you find your work meaningful? I think it's one of the key questions for people. So I started this quest for meaning at Microsoft in the US. So I figured out it's time maybe to get some additional education, so I went and did an MBA at the University of Washington. I could have gone and did the master in computer science, but I figured at that time I knew enough about computer science, it was time to actually try something else. So as part of the journey through the MBA, I learned a lot about entrepreneurship. And I was actually, while in Redmond, I was, as part of my product group, SQL Server, I launched a couple of initiatives, internal initiatives, and so, it became, so being an engineer at that time was not just about building product, it was also about launching these initiatives. So I made my life more interesting, and also it was a way for me to basically get on this fast path within Microsoft. So at that time, basically what I decided is, this entrepreneurship, but the corporate entrepreneurship is the way forward for me personally. So in the US, when you think of an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs are basically the pinnacle the most admired people in the United States. And so, every generation in the US has its set of entrepreneurs that they're very, they talk about publicly. So right now it's Elon Musk, he used to be Bezos, before that it was Gates. So every basically generation has their entrepreneurs. When we think of entrepreneurs in our country, the image is a lot more complicated. Over the last, I would say, 5 years, 10 years, the tech entrepreneurs here have changed the image somewhat. But there's still lots of work remaining. And so, we talk a lot about startups, but there's actually at least four different types of entrepreneurship. And so I'll talk, this presentation is about corporate entrepreneurship. It's about a little bit about social entrepreneurship. There's a lot of other people that will tell you about startups and small businesses. So when we talk about these four different kinds of entrepreneurship, what is common between all of these? And so it's about this product market fit. Once you find the product market fit, then basically you go and you continue iterating and iterating, building the business. But to find the product market fit, you have to first find a team. You have to sell the idea to some sort of investor. And then, you have to make several attempts at finding the product market fit. It never happens on the first iteration. And so if you really think about what life is about, you try things, you fail, you try, you fail, you go on, you build relationships, you do stuff together. So entrepreneurship, in some sense, it's very similar to how life actually works. And so I have 4 stories about corporate entrepreneurship. The first one is, a lot of people that know me, that are associated with Microsoft, they know this story. So how did the Microsoft Dev Center get started in 2005? So 2005 is only 6 years after bombing. So think about, starting today, Microsoft starting a dev center in Syria or in Kabul. It just wouldn't happen, right? But it did get started in Belgrade. When Microsoft looks for places, or when any large corporation looks for places where to start a dev center, they're looking for a place that has lots of engineers. They're looking for a place that has top 25 school, or at least top 50 school. And they're looking for a place, basically, that has reasonably decent legal system. IP protections, basically. So if you look at Belgrade in 2005, we didn't have that many engineers. Our school is pretty decent, but not nearly as good as top 50 school or top 25. And as far as the legal system goes, we had challenges then, we have some challenges now too. So the question is, how did this happen? And a lot of people, when I ask this question, would say, well, it got started because Microsoft was looking for a cheap place, right? And lots of engineers that they can get for a little bit of money. And that's really not the reason. It got started because of one individual, is Bodin Drešević. He was an established engineer at Microsoft. He did really great things within Windows organization, and they sent him here. They let him come here. It was an experiment. It was a very low-risk experiment, but it paid off big time for Microsoft. So sometimes it takes only one person to start great things. That person might be you, or you might join somebody else who has a good idea to get things started. And this is where I come in. How did we grow the Dev Center? So I came back in 2008, helped Bodin grow the Dev Center. I made my contributions there. And for me, why did I do this? So it was about the challenge. And the challenge for me was like, can I contribute so that we can go and build this great team, build the Dev Center here in Serbia and Belgrade? And then perhaps, if we're successful in doing this, this story might actually inspire some other people. So that was kind of the challenge that I found meaningful. So I was working for the same product group, same product, but the work became a lot more meaningful for me personally. So what did we do? People in the US didn't just say, hey, now that we have this dev center in Belgrade, why don't we pour hundreds of engineers there, right? So what we did is, we were in the search of this product market fit. So every quarter, we'll come up with a bunch of prototypes. We would go to Redmond. We'll find, rather than VCs, we would find our executives. We would present this product hypothesis. We would do a demo. Then we would basically ask for funding. And most of the time, we'll hear, no, like it's too early or too late, or just basically we didn't get along with people. But we continue doing this. quarter after quarter, quarter after quarter. And on third, fourth tries, some of these ideas actually materialized. And that's how, that basically one by one, we were starting new projects, new teams. And over the course of 18 years, now we have hundreds of people in Belgrade. There's more. It's not just one thing. One part of the playbook is basically iterating and trying out. The other part of the playbook is actually every time you're doing things, you need to know what your strengths are and then capitalize on those strengths. So one of the things that's great about Serbia, about Belgrade, is people usually stick around if the team is good, if the atmosphere is good, if the work is actually interesting. So in Redmond, people are basically having large attrition rates. Folks in our team stayed. So basically, year over year, our expertise was accumulating. Not only that, we know that here we have even our university, the product of our university are folks with actually very good mathematical education. So some of the first teams, data science teams at Microsoft were actually teams here. We recognized this advantage and then we played into it. And then finally, technological change is a problem for incumbent teams, but it's an opportunity for new upcoming teams. So about 12 years ago, when Microsoft got serious about cloud, a lot of people in Redmond saw that as a nuisance. They were slow at reacting. We embraced the change. And over 2-3 years, we became one of the most prolific engineering teams that can operate in the cloud. So that, again, then reinforced this quality bar and then reinforced, basically, Redmond executives continued investing in our team. And then the icing on the cake, šlag na torti, is this story. It's a story about building managed instance, Azure SQL managed instance. When I joked around while I was at Microsoft, I would joke around at the team meetings. I would frequently say, since Dusan Silni, this might be the biggest business built in Serbia. So it took us, as you can see, this is about 2017. So it took us about 7-8 years to build the team, build the engineering capacity to actually do this stuff. We very early recognized this product market fit, and then we went for it. By the time that Redmond figured out what was going on and other teams wanted to contest our ownership of the service, it was already too late. We mobilized our teams. We got some of our best engineers to build a prototype very early. And then we shut down many of our efforts, who were very great, great technological efforts, but they were not a new business. And we allocated them on this project. So basically, very quickly, we had end-to-end running service. We've been building our product capacity for a number of years. And so this was the time when our product managers, they went out, talked to customers. This was a time when we learned from these top-tier enterprises, and then we continued very quickly iterating and iterating. And so basically, it takes time to build great things. I would say, some people would say it takes, 10 years for overnight success. I would say it takes at least 8 years to really, truly start to shine. And so the latest chapter of the journey, and there's no lessons learned, actually, for Databricks, but the latest chapter is, in my journey, is working for Databricks. This year, I decided it was time for a change. I decided that, I will accelerate my learning if I go other places, some other place. I talked to a couple of companies, but Databricks was kind of like the love on first sight. And so Databricks is an interesting company. And just to illustrate basically how good is their brand, they're one of the darlings in the Silicon Valley. And so recently they had a hiring event in Bangalore. They had four openings for internships. 500 people from their top schools, Indian Institutes of Technology, ITs, 500 people, pretty much the entire computer science class applied for these 4 internships. So that's how good their brand is. And so they're now part of this IT ecosystem in Belgrade. And so why am I sharing this story? It's not a story about me. It's actually a story about all of us. We have now in our ecosystem companies that have been around for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. When Databricks started looking at this place as a potential investment, they realized that there's hundreds of engineers now who are super experienced, who have great track records in delivering stuff. And so for them, it was not a hard decision to actually bet on Belgrade. And when you compare this story with the heroic story from 2005, when Microsoft started Dev Center here, it's really, night and day difference. And it's a testament to the work of basically the entire ecosystem. So how things are going to end up at Databricks, we'll see. That's some other presentation. So with this, I'm closing the story on corporate entrepreneurship. Now, I have actually a much more difficult message here that I hope is going to land. So in 2016, I did this presentation at TEDx, and my claim was the following. Tech is going to grow so fast, and it's going to be such a success that it's going to change this country. And what I said, the economic impact is basically given. My claim was different. My claim was that tech folks, the tech industry, builds great people. So people who work in our teams, they meet other folks from other places in the world. They speak different languages. They go visit places. They talk about life, universe, and everything. And they become enriched. They become much more valuable and much more educated. So then they take this knowledge and bring it here. And with that knowledge, they disseminate the knowledge to their company. They disseminate it to the family, their kids, and the community. And over time, basically what happens is that the communities in which these people operate, they change. And overall, we all profit and we become essentially a better community. So I was claiming this in 2016, and a lot of my friends, some of whom should be here, would say, well, it's a nice story. But the story really doesn't make much sense because you guys are in the bubble. And then I would say, well, yeah, we are in the bubble, but our bubble is growing at least 20, 30% per year. So, if you know mathematics, it doesn't take much to realize that this bubble is going to take over the entire local ecosystem, and that you will be part of the bubble, even though you might not be part of the bubble today. So they would sometimes I would convince them, sometimes I wouldn't, but I'm here to actually tell you that this bubble has burst. It happened this year. And it's not because of AI, and it's not because of the layoffs. It's actually because of the events that took place on May 3rd in the school nearby. Silence. Good. So I'm not here to tell you we should be victims. I'm the last guy that will tell you at this point that we should leave the country. So the question is, what can we do, right? And I'm not the guy who will punt this problem to the government, because we, the people, are actually the country, and government is the government. So the question is, what do we do? So I don't have a complete answer, but I have at least part of the answer. And part of the answer is this fourth type of entrepreneurship, and that's about social entrepreneurship. So social entrepreneurship is people getting together and basically doing stuff for a cause, whatever they believe in. People basically forming teams, spending their time, resources on initiatives that they really care about. So this is me. Other than work, this other slide completes the picture of who is Dragan Tomić. These are the initiatives I'm certainly not leading. I'm participating, some tangentially, some I just know they exist. Some actually I spent some time in. And my interests are not usual interests, right? Like these outdoor activities, spending lots of time in tents and hiking and running and all of that. It's not for everyone. But what I'm trying to say here is, look, I was able to find my community, even though my interests are very specific. And not only that I was able to find my community, but these are the organizations that provide color, happiness to my life. So then the question is, what are your communities? If I was able to find my place, I'm 100% sure that you'll be able to find your place. And my ask is basically, to get involved with your community. And I'll finish with this verse from Ultra Trkert Serbia. In this modern times, it's probably one of the best things written. And I'll just say, I talked about 2016. Now it's 2023. And, we're going to talk again in 2030. At the time, I'm probably going to be too old to present, but I'm hoping that I'll be sitting somewhere in the audience. The story of tech unicorns from Serbia they are going to happen. You know, it's just a matter of time. The question is who is going to do it. There's too many people now in tech. There's too much knowledge. There's too much momentum. It's going to happen. The story that I would like to hear in 2030 is how we got together, how we started getting together perhaps today, and how we pushed together and created a much better, much happier, more connected, and resilient community. Thank you.